Well, who can forget the classic Alfred Hitchcock thriller The Birds and its star, Tippi Hedren. Miss Hedren is our guest this hour of the show, and while I'm sure you've done thousands upon thousands of interviews, more than likely they all start off with questions about Alfred Hitchcock. I want to take a different tack and ask you about your work with Charlie Chaplin in the 1967 movie A Countess from Hong Kong.
Oh, well, that was unique. According to everybody in the motion picture industry, I am the only actress who worked with both the iconic English directors and producers, both Hitchcock and Chaplin.
And both very different, I would imagine, in their approach.
Oh, entirely different. Yes, in every way. Their choice of film, their way of directing, their methods of producing and directing were totally different. Alfred Hitchcock was so organized and so amazingly decisive in what he wanted that he literally worked 9 to 5. The rest of us had to, be there early to, for makeup and all that sort of thing. But at 5 o'clock, we had the martini shot. And, he knew exactly what he wanted. He didn't overshoot. He really spoiled me, for other directors who didn't exactly know what they wanted, or they do take after take, and I wasn't good at that.
I have to ask you, because that is something that actors have to come up against in their career. Sometimes you have a director who's either unsure or maybe is a little passive-aggressive and can't actually tell you what he's looking for.
Yeah.
And then you have...
They do that.
Yeah, then you have directors who are, I know exactly what I want.
Yes.
And whether or not
and that, of course, is the joy of every actor when they find a director who knows what he wants and sees it. It makes the whole endeavor very pleasing when that kind of thing happens. But I have to tell you, working with Charlie was one of the most delightful times of movie making that I ever experienced, because his method of directing was to, at the very beginning of the scene, he would get out on the stage and he would become my character. He became Sophia Loren's character, Marlon Brando's character, his son's character. And it was so fabulous to see, because his body would change, the voice would change. It was stunning to watch this. I wish they'd had a second unit camera.
You must have gotten a whole Chaplin private performance every day.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sophia and I really loved it. We just loved it, But poor Marlon was just miserable.
Well, I could understand, as a method actor, that would be the...
the epitome of insult to an actor. And then being shown what to do. The poor man was so insulted that he wanted to quit. Marlon wanted to quit. And, of course, Charlie said, well, no, you can't. You're under contract.
Right.
And Marlon said, no, I want to quit. And he said, okay, you call a press conference, I'll call a press conference, and we'll see who wins this battle. So that was the end of that. But it was amazing to watch him work.
At Universal City in California, they prepare for the start of a unique pigeon derby across the U.S. The official starters are director Alfred Hitchcock and Tippi Hedren, who is being introduced to theatergoers in Mr. Hitchcock's The Birds. Pigeons are too slow for Mr. Hitchcock and Ms. Hedren, who arrive in New York in a more conventional manner to prepare for the opening of the shock thriller based on the classic by Daphne du Maurier. The well-trained Raven has a part in The Birds, but we think it's going to be Tippi Hedren who'll draw the crowds.
Now, of course, it's the 50th anniversary of The Birds, which is...
Isn't it amazing?
Outrageous to me.
Yeah.
To think that it's been that long ago.
I don't know of another film who has this kind of celebrity.
Yeah, it's...
a lot of films that everybody remembers or whatever, but honest to God, this film has a life of its own.
And when I watched the film as a kid, and I'm sure people have the same reaction today when they see it for the first time, you sit there and you watch it and you go, oh, don't go over here. Don't do that.
Don't go there.
Don't do that. That's the worst thing you could do. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Don't do that. Yeah. I said, Mr. Hitchcock, why would she go up those stairs all by herself, knowing what has happened to the people of the town and the children and, having very first-hand knowledge of what was going on? Why would she do that? And he paused like he'd never thought of that before. And he said, because I tell you to. Okay. It was fascinating, and it was fascinating having him as my first director.
Right.
The Birds was my first film, so he was not only my director, he was my drama coach.
Now, did he say to you, by the way, we're going to throw live birds at you?
Oh, no, they all lied to me. Because when I first read the script, I first of all, there were questions, of course, about the birds and the reality of that. And then I said, how would we be doing that scene where I open the door and all of those birds come flying at me? He said, oh, well, that's no problem. We'll just use the mechanical birds like we do with the children. Well, they all lied to me. I didn't know about using the real birds till the Monday morning that we started filming. And Jim Brown, the late Jim Brown, who was the assistant director, came in, and he couldn't look at me. He looked at the floor and the walls and the ceiling, and I said, what's the matter with you, Jim? And he said, the mechanical birds don't work. We have to use real ones. And out the door he sailed. And I picked up my jaw off the floor and went out there, and they had no intentions of using mechanical birds. There wasn't a mechanical bird in sight. And they had built a cage around the door that I come in, and inside that cage were 4 or 5, with a ceiling on it, there were 4 or 5 huge cartons of raven and gull and a few pigeons thrown in, and bird trainers who had leather gauntlets up to their shoulders, which they alternately threw at me for 5 days.
Well, and you really suffered for your art in that film.
I did suffer for my art.
Yeah.
I did.
Our guest on the program today is Tippi Hedren, and I have to ask you about another Alfred Hitchcock movie you made. This one co-starring, an actor who was, I guess, at the first peak of his career, Marnie, with
Sean.
With Sean Connery, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, he had just gotten out of Dr. No. I have to tell you a funny story. You saw Marnie, yes?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So Hitchcock had been looking for the Mark Rutland character, and he couldn't find anybody in Hollywood. And it was getting close to where he should really make a decision. And finally he came in and he said, I found your Mark Rutland. I said, great, who is it? And he said, Sean Connery. And I said, Sean Connery? The Sean Connery who just got out of Dr. No? The Sean Connery who is on Time magazine as being the sexiest man in the world? The Sean Connery who could melt the iciest of blondes? Mr. Hitchcock, the character of Marnie is so frigid that she screams every time a man comes near her. Now, how am I supposed to handle that? And he said, it's called acting, my dear.
Well, you pulled it off, that's for sure.
I did. And, so many people have said to me, well, didn't you have a little fling with Sean? And, and believe me, it crossed my mind. But I was playing this very frigid woman. And, if you start fooling around like that, it shows in your eyes.
Oh, sure.
And I said, I am not going to do this. As much as I would love to go sailing off into the seas with Sean Connery, I'm not going to do it.
It's horrible, I know. But I do love you.
You don't love me. I'm just something you've caught. You think I'm some kind of animal you've trapped.
That's right, you are. And I've caught something really wild this time, haven't I? I've tracked you and caught you, and by God, I'm going to keep you.
I know that, and this has been covered extensively, and I don't want to dwell too much on it, but I know that Hitchcock, as brilliant as he was, did have a tendency to become obsessed with actresses. Yes. And as I understand it, he unfortunately aimed his sights on you, and for a while you couldn't work because you were under contract with him?
Yes. I've for any woman in your audience who has been the object of someone's obsession when they're not interested, it can be a nightmare. And that's really what it was. And then I was under contract to him, which made my life absolutely miserable. And it finally got to the point where I had to say to him, I want to get out of the contract. I have to get out of the contract because the final demand was so oppressive and so awful that there was nothing else I could do. I mean, and to keep my sanity and to to uphold the way I had been brought up, and I had to get out. And he said, I'll ruin your career, and he did. He kept me under contract and kept paying me my $600 a week. And when I got out of Marnie and the Birds, I was, as the Hollywood expression goes, hot as an actress.
Right, sure.
And there were a lot of films that directors and producers wanted me for. And in order to get to me, they had to go through him. And all he had to say was, she isn't available.
Wow.
And it was, and I didn't even know that this was happening until, 2 or 3 years later, where I would hear about, some of the different films. And, it was really, it was sad and tragic. And, yes, he did ruin my career, but he didn't ruin my life.
Mm. I just wondered, though, if it's possible when someone behaves the way Hitchcock behaved, if it's possible to compartmentalize and admire the man's work and not have it taint, your opinion of him. A number of people have asked me that question, and I have to tell you that I have been able to separate the two. I mean, there were two different people. Right. In that brain, or I don't know how many others, but I have been able to absolutely recognize the talent, and am grateful that I was able to work with him and learn from him. But as far as the man himself, he was mean and cruel, conniving, evil. And I wasn't the only one who was the recipient of kinds of things. And two of the women got pregnant just to get out of, two actresses just to get out of the situation. And I think I was the only one who really talked about it, and it took me years. The first person I talked to was Donald Spoto, who became a very, very dear, close friend in the 80s. Donald Spoto, the biographer. Sure, famous biographer, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I never talked about it to anybody because it was a difficult subject, and one that I was embarrassed by it. And it took me a long time to really get over all of that, and because it wasn't my fault.
Changing topics here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, let's do that.
I'll tell you this story, and this might be something that you've heard different versions of throughout the years, but in New York City, of all places, about every 10 years or so, there's a story about someone hearing bizarre rumblings going on in someone's apartment, and eventually the police are called, and you find out, and I kid you not, that someone has a lion or a tiger in their apartment in New York City. And you read these stories and you think to yourself, first of all, how is this even possible that you could bring a lion? And secondly, why? Why would anyone want to do this? And this is something that you've really taken up the mantle.
I'm very familiar with all of that, and it is amazing. It's an enigma to me as to why anybody would think of a lion or as a tiger being even considered as a pet or use them for financial gain. I mean, these are apex predators, top of the food chain, one of 4 of the most dangerous animals in the world, and our government says, sure, breed them, sell them for whatever. In fact, our government looks at them as a natural resource.
That's crazy.
Now, figure that one out.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
And we're in our 41st year of rescuing lions and tigers. I founded and formed the Roar Foundation, which is the financial support arm for what we started calling the Shambala Preserve in 1983. And, so prior to those years, we were learning so much about these animals when we did our movie, because that's why we started rescuing these big cats, lions, tigers, leopards, mountain lions, all of them in desperate need of a home, of sanctuary. And, and eventually you have to say, why is this being allowed?
Yeah.
And nobody was doing anything about it. All the big animal organizations, nobody was doing anything to stop it. So I put together a bill in 2003. It was titled the Captive Wildlife Safety Act, and I brought it to my own congressman, Buck McKeon. And I said, would you introduce this bill for me? Would you help with this? And he said, well, I don't know, And I said, well, would you just look at this 4-minute video that I've put together? Because they say don't make it any more than 4 minutes because they don't have time to watch them.
Right.
And so anyway, at the end of the video, he turned to me and he said, absolutely, this is insanity. And that bill passed unanimously in the House and Senate, and when I testified, what I did was list about 18 accidents of the hundreds and hundreds of maulings and killings perpetrated on children and adults. I started out with a little boy in Texas, 4-year-old little boy, Chayton, who had his arm ripped off by his uncle's pet tiger in Texas. Oh. And they were able to retrieve the arm, and due to the miracles of modern medicine, they were able to reattach it, but it isn't operable for him. All these big cats are very interested in children for not good reasons.
Right. It just amazes me. I can't imagine the mentality of someone who says, I'm going to raise tigers in my backyard because I think that would be impressive to my friends.
Yeah, well, a lot of it is they're uninformed or stupid,
right,
or very pompous, and of course they will find out.
So if people want to see what your animal sanctuary is all about, Shambala.org is the website. I hope I'm pronouncing that. It is Shambala.
Yeah, we say Shambala.
Okay.
Three Dog Night did a song on the road to Shambala.
Right, okay.
But we say, I don't know, I like Shambala.
Yeah, no, when I go to say it, for some reason I keep wanting to say Shangri-La. And I suppose for the animals it is. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
It works for the animals, too.
Yes,
well, I want to thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us about a whole host of topics here today. It's been a really fascinating interview.
Well, thank you, and I want to compliment you on being one of the best interviewers I've ever talked to.
Thank you so much, Miss Hedren. I appreciate it.
Bye-bye.